Gran and the gang are back with rollback netcode, a load of new characters, new modes, and more changes, and you can play most of it for free. I always say that fighting games are best played with friends, if you have any. So is this the perfect opportunity to get your friends into fighting games? Is the free version enough to get someone into the genre without spending a single bison dollar? Playing the prior game in the series, it felt like Arc System Works had prioritized beginner friendliness throughout. So how does Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising hold up for noobs? Let's start with controls. Granblue lets you input special moves using traditional motion controls like quarter circles and dragon punch zigzags, or by pressing a special button plus a direction. There's a lot of debate in the community over the drawbacks of this approach. Arguably, the fact that motion controls take time to input and are not 100% reliable is part of how these more powerful moves are balanced, and simplifying the inputs can have knock-on effects. Watch Daz's Bambo's video when fighting games remove DP motions for a more in-depth discussion of that in the context of Persona 4 Arena. But in my opinion, it makes a big difference for absolute beginners. Other games don't ask you to do inputs like this, and it can be confusing and frustrating for the first few hours of a newcomer to the genre. If you have been put off by motion controls in the past, Granblue has you covered. On a similar topic, Granblue has short auto combos, and the game's tutorials, which I'll get to shortly, show the noob how to extend these in different waves using special moves. One thing I like about both the simple inputs and auto combos in Rising is that they help the newcomer play the game very quickly regardless of prior fighting game experience, but there is plenty of incentive to later learn traditional inputs which cause your special moves to do more damage, and learn manual combos which might do more damage or be useful in different situations. These systems give you an easy jumping on point without holding back the player who wants to go further and learn the skills that will apply to other games in the genre. There are also new mechanics in Rising that add additional depth to explore as you get further into the game. The story mode starts with some simple tutorials, so this is a good place for beginners to jump in. It works a bit like a side-scrolling beat-em-up, often with multiple weak enemies on screen at once. There are also challenges to specifically test your skills, including one with enemies that you need to hit with combos of a certain length to kill them. These are pretty simple, although I can imagine a total beginner might struggle with the timing of the combos and get a bit stuck, so it would be good to see more in-game indications of the needed timing. I think they could have gone further with these and developed more missions that tested the player's handle of the various mechanics in the game, but it's good that they have tried to tie learning into gameplay in a more interesting way than a typical dry tutorial. There are 3 parts of the story, and 3 players can play the first one, which includes the tutorial elements and will last a few hours if you're not skipping all the dialogue. If you aren't pulled in by the gripping plot, you might find the arcade mode more fun, and I really like the elements of choice that it offers. You choose your first opponent and difficulty level, and then after each opponent you beat, you again have a choice of opponents and difficulty levels for your next fight. This means if you're new and you have started too difficult or too easy, you can adjust the difficulty as you go along. Or if you want to practice your matchup against a particular character and they pop up as an option, you can choose to fight them over another character. The easier difficulties of arcade mode should be beatable for most beginners without learning the details of the game's mechanics. To face the harder difficulties, or other human players, beginners will eventually want to turn to training mode and its tutorial missions, what the game calls situational training. This has missions starting from the absolute basics and going into more complicated gameplay scenarios, almost all of which are available to free players. What isn't free is most of the character strategy missions, which cover tips on playing as each character, and matchup training, which has tips for playing against each character. But that's not a big drawback. There is plenty of learning material here for free. These could go further, of course. For example, while the scenarios implicitly touch on how frame data can determine whether a hit will land through the hit confirm mission, the game doesn't explicitly explain frame data in a way that would help the beginner make use of the inbuilt frame data visualization available in training. Instead of a move list, the game calls it a character guide. This lists your moves with little videos of them and has handy information about the properties of the moves. Through this, within training mode, you can also access tips on how to play your character at different ranges and on defense, as well as combo trials. Again, it would be good if the game offered a timing visualization or other help for beginners to get their head around the required timing for combos in this mode. But okay, enough of the single player stuff. Let's go online. True matchmaking in both casual and ranked, I found it pretty quick and easy to find fellow low ranked players who felt around my level or just above it, meaning I was able to win some rounds even if I was losing most of my matches. Aside from Gran always being available, free players have a rotating cast of 3 more characters they can access, which change each week. I was kind of expecting online matches to be full of my fellow Gran playing free version scrubs, but most of the opponents I came up against were not using the free characters and must have paid for the full version of the game. As an alternative to quick matchmaking, you can find opponents through the lobby. Here, you can run around as a little chibi character and even take part in silly stuff like kicking a football around. This is a nice way to unwind between ranked matches, and it definitely felt like it encouraged some Neko Arc enjoyer type behaviours. After playing some informal football and jumping and sliding with one particular player, we went and fought a match. The silly side of stuff in the Rising lobby is in some ways irrelevant to the fighting game, but I think it has the potential to take some of the intimidating sting out of online competition for newcomers. Similarly, the Grand Bruise mode, basically a Fall Guys-like, feels irrelevant to the fighting game, except that it can serve as a bit of a palate cleanser after losing 5 matches in a row in ranked. This is fine, and it's a nice little addition which you can ignore if it doesn't interest you. I would have loved to see them link it to the fighting game in actual gameplay though. In some of the rounds you have to break doors or boxes. What if you could break them a bit faster by inputting a character specific combo, or even something as simple as a box having a high or low weak point and using a high or low attack for your character would break it quicker. Or how about a rhythm game type level where you have to press combo inputs with the right timing to progress? That would be something that wouldn't make a huge difference for most people playing Granblues casually, but would add a little bit of learning value for fighting game noobs who might benefit from practicing their skills outside the context of a fight. So there's a huge amount of content available for free. If you only really want to play Gran, who is a pretty beginner-friendly character with a moveset that more or less translates to certain characters in many other fighting games, and you're not too bothered about playing the whole story mode, you basically have a whole fighting game for free. The rotating cast of extra characters is not necessarily a terrible thing for newcomers. It reduces choice paralysis when picking a character to play, and checking out each week's characters could be a fun way to explore the total cast over time. But it obviously might hold you back if you find that you really click with a character and then they rotate out of the selection and you don't have the money to pay for the full game. In the good old days, a friend would come round, would hand them the Mad Catz controller with a sticky D-pad, and put the Tekken 2 disc into the PlayStation. Nowadays, a lot of gaming with buddies happens online, and if someone's not sure if they will like Street Fighter 6, they won't necessarily want to spend £50 to find out. But if you're into Granblue, you might find it easier to persuade your friend to download the free version and give it a try. You can even ease them in by playing Grand Bruise or lobby football with them before crushing them head to head. There's even crossplay, so if you're on PC and your friend only plays on PlayStation, they have no excuse not to play Granblue with you. So, if you have friends who don't play fighting games, this could be the perfect chance to convert them.